it's kind of exactly what happened to MicroStrategy. I remember like the summer of 2020, basically like this random SEC, approved document comes out from random company called MicroStrategy, which no one had really heard of. I think at the time it was probably a $1 billion company. And like one paragraph within the document, it basically said MicroStrategy is considering adopting another asset other than dollars as their treasury reserve asset. And they listed like the S&P 500, they listed gold, they listed corporate paper, like short-term corporate debt, they listed Bitcoin, and everyone kind of freaked out about it on Twitter at the time, and like, oh my gosh, like a public company might actually buy Bitcoin, like this is crazy. And then like we little did everyone know that like it was going to be Michael Saylor, and he literally was going to go on a full rampage of buying as much Bitcoin as humanly possible and like basically creating a leveraged Bitcoin ETF. So like you never know like with these things of who necessarily like wanted that in that document that Microsoft released, and you never know like what Microsoft shareholders are really going to do and like what the largest ones are going to advocate for. But again, it's like Microsoft is such a larger company. I kind of a difficult time seeing them go full Saylor mode where they just empty their cash, buy a bunch of Bitcoin, start doing convertible notes, buy a bunch of Bitcoin, issue equity, buy a bunch of Bitcoin. I think they should do that for sure. And they would absolutely crush it if they did. And Bitcoin would absolutely soar, but probably a very low probability that happens, but they should do it. At least that's what I think. But it's interesting because it's like, we are now at a stage where like, I think like 94% of all Bitcoin have already been mined. Global adoption in my mind is still like significantly less than 1%. If we start to see like the Magnificent Seven or these large tech companies actually go deep into Bitcoin and like adopt it as their treasury reserve asset and begin accumulating it very aggressively, then like this bull market is going to be absolutely insane. So yeah, I mean, it seems like it will be, who knows exactly what's going to happen with Microsoft, especially over the next few months. But I really hope that they do decide to buy at least a few $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, and hopefully maybe their CEO or someone else on their executive team is talking to Saylor and other people within the industry, and they recognize like how much of a breakthrough this is in terms of like preserving long-term wealth and how early it is and how much upside there remains just by sitting on cold storage Bitcoin. And I think if someone internally recognizes that, or enough people internally recognize that, and the price starts running up, then it could just be they could be the domino that get Apple, Meta, and other companies within the S&P 500 to really follow through and kind of do the same thing. Because when it's also like, it's so interesting where in business, I feel like you don't necessarily want people to copy you because business is highly competitive. And if you're doing one product and Apple comes out with a similar product, you're going to be like, oh, dang, like that's bad. Like my margins are going to get compressed. They could build a better product. Like there's so much to worry about. Whereas Bitcoin is just this very positive sum game where Saylor wants people to copy him. Like no other business actually wants another business to copy their exact same strategy. And if all of these businesses start copying the Michael Saylor playbook and adopting Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset, then like everyone wins. And that's like a beautiful thing and a beautiful outcome. And it might start happening. Who knows?
If Trump wins, what are your thoughts kind of going forward in terms of could sound money, the dollar, Bitcoin, and then if Harris wins, because I think that this could be even 4 years from now in a way too. Like this is kind of like this fight that just keeps playing out. But what are your two scenarios you're thinking or been thinking about if either side kind of gets control?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think starting off, I would say that neither candidate really understands Bitcoin. Like no candidate is obviously like a full-on Bitcoin maximalist. With that said, I also think that like there's clearly one candidate that would be better for Bitcoin in the short to medium term and probably even long term, and better for America. I would say Trump would be that candidate. I mean, he spoke in Nashville at Bitcoin 2024. He announced with Senator Lummis's help, like he announced this idea of a strategic Bitcoin stockpile, which would be great for America, because who's to say that we are going to have the dollar as the world reserve currency forever, and we're going to be able to issue trillions of dollars of new debt, and there's going to be someone to buy that, and that we're going to be able to use that to our advantage for the next century. Like that may not be the case. We need to hedge our bet with a theoretically, if the internet and cryptography enabled us to discover a new superior form of money or a new superior treasury reserve asset, we should be ahead of the curve and buy that asset with the money that we can literally create out of thin air and waste it on so much, worthless things. We need to be buying Bitcoin with that. And so I think Trump has the right people around him, that he's starting to at least be on the somewhat right direction. And I think if he got elected, he would have smart people around him that would be explaining him like how important this might be. And I think as Bitcoin, ripped after the election and, throughout 2025, I think he would be all aboard the Bitcoin train. Like you've had, with the Biden administration, you've had things like Operation Choke Point, where it's been pretty clear that like banks and other financial services firms were like, censored and shut down effectively by the administration and kind of blamed on like the banking crisis for insolvency. But in reality, like it was kind of like a coordinated attack on crypto. You had like the SEC, SEC could have approved a Bitcoin ETF in like 2013. They waited until 2024 to quote unquote protect investors. Like that was the best asset you could have bought from 2013 to 2024. And the entity that, is supposed to be out there protecting innocent retail investors forced innocent retail investors to miss the biggest trade of the last 10 years, which is like absolutely ridiculous. And so now that exists, and thankfully it does exist for more and more people to just get access to Bitcoin, get their first few, little exposure to Bitcoin. It's a great tool. I think that like, the Harris administration hopefully would be more pro Bitcoin. And I think they would be, because like, kind of like I said, earlier, it's like, there's no incentive to be anti-Bitcoin. Like you can be, but you're going to lose votes in the long run. And that's not a good strategy. I think, again, Trump would be a lot better. And I, personally hope he wins. And I think that would be good for both America and Bitcoin. But I also think that both candidates are in no shape or form ever going to balance the budget. They're going to continue running $1 trillion annual deficits. And that's also going to be good for Bitcoin. So it's like long term, it's probably a win-win. I think Trump will do more for Bitcoin in the short term. And I think Trump will be more open to like really protecting the rights of Bitcoin holders, whether that's the right to self-custody or just the right to own a claim on Bitcoin. I think that Trump is objectively better for Bitcoin. I don't think many people would disagree with that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. Decades from now, it may not matter too much for Bitcoin itself. I think America will be better off with Trump, but long term, Bitcoin's probably going to continue to exist. It's probably going to continue to win. And I hope America, fully embraces Bitcoin and makes Bitcoin, home. It continues to be open to Bitcoin and continues to enable people to buy as much Bitcoin as possible effectively.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.